when did you start that process of learning Vietnamese?
Funny story goes like this. Basically, I thought I was better than a lot of people because I had learned funny catchphrases and comebacks and whatnot. But in all honesty, I didn't know anything about the language. I was just overconfident. And when I met my wife's mom for the first time, which in Vietnamese culture is like the third date, I was dropping her off at the house. She was visiting from America, and she asked me if I wanted something to drink in Vietnamese. And I said, oh, no, thank you. How are you doing? And I called her Che. And Che is for older ladies, but it's meant for like a lady that's like 5 or 10 years older than you. There's a different level of pronoun if it's an older lady, especially your girlfriend's mom. And she didn't care, but my wife's like, oh, I can't believe you called my mom Che. I'm like, but she's an older lady. That's what I'm supposed to call her. No, it's more to that. And after that experience, I went and hired a private tutor who I still study with today off and on. And she was very talented. She had helped one of my friends become very fluent with the language. She speaks fluent English. She speaks a lot of Chinese, and she's obviously Vietnamese. And Vietnamese has a lot of root words that come from Chinese. Maybe about 50 or 60% of the language actually comes from Chinese. So if you can understand that, you can explain it better. Whereas we have certain words, they call them Từ Han Viet, which are Chinese root words, kind of like Latin can be, you have Latin root words for English. It's similar to that. So if you understand why that word means what it does because of the Chinese root, then it makes it easier to understand in other contexts, if that makes sense. So yeah, to finish your question, yes, I got a private tutor in 2016. And after about 2 years, I started my YouTube channel, not realizing that I was as good as I was. I wasn't that good, but I was good enough to be understood by the masses in Vietnam on my channel.
Yeah, there's that kind of basic threshold of like when you can start communicating and start living in the language, then the rest of the details kind of fill themselves in to a certain degree, right? At the beginning, you really have to put a lot of effort into like constructing this new grammar and how do I make sentences and what's the word order and pronunciation. But once you're communicating with people, you can just continue to add on to it, more and more and more. And I do think it gets it gets a lot easier when you're learning in natural environments versus artificial environments like you have to do at the beginning with like books and flashcards and stuff.
For sure. And I try to explain to my students that it's sort of like a system. And this applies to any language. And I'm sure you've seen it in your interactions. When you go to the market, you go to the store, they find out that you speak some Vietnamese. The questions are generally the same. It's like, what's your name? Where are you from? What are you doing here? What do you do for work? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? How old are you? It follows this system, this flow chart, if you will. And my goal was to go from answering one question to 2 to 4 to 10. And how far could I take that conversation before I didn't understand what they were asking? But eventually I got to where I can go. My first and second interactions with Vietnamese people are really good. I can use all my jokes. I can make them laugh. It's when I get deeper into the relationship that's where the flow chart stops, and I have to keep improving on that.
Yeah, I would imagine for those initial conversations with someone that you haven't met before, you can probably do that on autopilot. I imagine you've had those conversations hundreds of times now, if not more.
And that was the whole immersion part where I could just walk out of my door and there's a lady selling vegetables in front of my building and I can start a conversation with her, and I can go down to the local supermarket in somebody's house and do the same thing. And I'm that kind of personality where I can have those basic conversations every day, but every time I do, I try to add something. I try to throw in a new joke or a new grammatical structure that I learned, and I use that to keep improving.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, having the ability, the opportunity, I guess, to practice all the time. Because like no one wants to learn a language in isolation. Like we do it, it's a tool. We use it as a tool to connect with people. And so for me, having a community of people or having, friends or coworkers or whatever that I want to connect with is like the ultimate motivation, because you can really see how it will help you get closer to them. This is the language they speak. If I learn that language, then this is only going to, bring good things for me.